Hello again. This is part 3, the final part for the Azure CI/CD for continuous integration and continuous deployment. In this part 3 in here, we're going to talk about gates. So you saw in the part 1, we created the application. We went ahead and used Git to put it in the source control system, and we explained in Azure DevOps how you can deal with the build pipeline versus the release pipelines, having multiple stages. And then in the part 2 video, we went ahead and put some approval levels. So moving from dev environment to QA to production, there will be an approval level. Somebody has to come in and approve for it to move forward with the next environment as well. And sometimes approval are not enough. There is something automatic that you'd like to do as well. Besides approval, maybe, that you'd like to make sure that it does not move beyond the build or beyond the dev or the QA. And gates are perfect for something like that. Let me go ahead and show you what gates is all about. So right now in part 3, I'm going to go back, let's say, to dev environment, the first one after the artifact of my build pipeline is ready. I'm going to click on the pre-deployment again. Remember, this is the one that we had me approve it before it moves forward. But if I go down here to gates, I'm going to go ahead and enable gates. And one of the nicest thing about gates is the fact that you can actually choose from 6 different deployment gates available in Azure DevOps right now. Before I even get to each and every single one of these 6 different gates, I wanted to show you what is the delay before evaluation mean. It's available in minutes or in hours. The default is 5 minutes. What does that mean? That means if I just save everything right now without adding any deployment gates at all, just be having the gates enabled and set to 5 minutes, that means when it gets to the dev, it will wait for 5 minutes. It will not do anything before it moves forward, okay? It will not even evaluate anything because I didn't add any gates. Just having it just like that to save 5 minutes, that will be enough for us not to move forward for 5 minutes, okay? Of course, during these 5 minutes, I would like to actually choose one of the gates. So I'm going to open this up. Let me move this a little bit because my big head is hiding this behind it. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit so you can see it better. Alrighty, so let me just go ahead and not split the screen too much. Okay, that's good enough for me. All right, so with that, let me go ahead and open up Add again. And these are the 6 that I wanted to talk to you about. What are they? The first one, let me bring this out of the way a little bit. All right, perfect. So the first one in here out of the 6 is check Azure policy compliance. If you click on this, there will be a couple of things. You have to choose a subscription into your Azure account, and you have to use a resource group, and then you might actually have already a policy added, something like you want to be PCI compliant or HIPAA compliant or whatever. So the nice thing about this is that before it moves from dev to QA, I can set up a gate saying before you move it, it's not enough that somebody approved it. It has to pass the PCI compliance or the HIPAA compliance or whatever. There is tons of different policies that you can actually borrow, use automatically, or you can create your own policy from scratch if you'd like as well. So this is a great thing. Do not move us forward. We definitely do not want to go to production if we don't pass the PCI compliance, for instance. So that will be a gate. Another one is an invoking of an Azure function. Again, if you click on it, you'll get to use your subscription, your resource group, where the Azure function is. And maybe that Azure function needs to run some code in whatever language you chose for your Azure function. And based on the response coming of it, if it's not 0, we can keep going. If it comes back as a 0, or whatever the value of the response is of the Azure function, we cannot keep it going. So that's a great thing. The other one that I use a lot, which is actually a lot of fun, is to invoke a REST API. Notice we're doing everything in here inside of the Azure DevOps, but can you imagine, for instance, if your company is using something like Jira for bug tracking and requirements tracking and documentation and issues? It's a very, very popular way, but Jira has an API as well. So maybe what I want to do is that before you move things from dev to QA, I need to actually make or invoke a REST API call, and I can give it the headers and I can give it the body of the REST API. I can make it a post, or I can get a get or a put, whatever you want. You can actually choose all of these, and then it would go ahead and run a query in Jira, for instance, using the API. And it needs to come back saying that there is no severe bugs reported against that specific sprint. And if there is even one reported that is of severity 1, which is very high, I should not be actually making dev move to QA or QA to production as well. Very, very useful feature that you can do whatever you want. And I'm just going to click on it right now just to give you an idea what it looks like. You see, I would be able to do the generic service connection in here. So I'll be able to click on manage, and this is what I'm going to be putting the header and the REST API, what it looks like. Maybe there is an API key, which you will have, for instance, in Jira, and so on. You can set the method. It could be a post, a get, a head, put, delete, whatever it is. And then you will put the header in here and then the body. So usually there is a little bit of work that you need to know to understand how Jira works and get an example of the workload or the payload that will need to be passed to Jira, and you put it in here, and then you will be able to see what comes back. And if it's 0, it means it couldn't find any bugs. For instance, open, not closed. You're only looking for the ones that have been left open, not closed. And if that's the case, we can actually move the gate forward to go to QA or production. Make sense? Let me go ahead and delete this one. Let's see what else we have in here. We have the query Azure Monitor alerts. I love this one because a lot of times you will be putting some Azure monitoring. You have some diagnostic settings for metrics and for logs. And you might actually say, before you move from dev to QA, I want you to go ahead and monitor in this resource group on that specific resource if there are any logs that invoked a specific like logic app or a specific alert that says something is bad is happening, or something we're not supposed to get. The CPU is over 70% or memory is over 90%. So if it's doing that, even though the application is running, it might not be running very well. And I don't want to move it to QA before I actually check the logs and see, okay, my gate rejected the build because even though it's working, it's not working to specification as well. So that could be a problem for us. Does that make sense? Very, very powerful. A lot of fun stuff you can do in here. I'm going to skip the next one because that's the one I'm going to be using for this example. But let's see the other one, which is very, very powerful as well. In the marketplace of Azure, you can install this something called Sonar Cloud Quality Gate. And that can actually check on the code analysis, a lot of things it can do for you. So instead of doing all that stuff yourself, you can just integrate the third-party Sonar Cloud and automatically be able to click on this in the gate and saying Sonar Cloud needs to tell us that we are over 90% acceptance of the code analysis. Anything below that, do not let the gate keep forward. It needs to go back to R&D, and the developers need to actually do some better quality of the code so that Sonar Cloud can actually move us forward. Otherwise, it will not be acceptable. Even though it builds, it compiles, it is running, that's not enough. So maybe you can run these things as well. Make sense? Gates are awesome. Alrighty. So I want to actually play around with this query work item in here. Let me go ahead and maximize this on the screen. I'm going to, even though I turned it on, it will check it every 5 minutes, even though it will not do anything after the 5 minutes. It will just keep it going. I'm going to close this down, and I wanted to show you something regarding using a work item in Azure DevOps to create a gate based on. Very fun. All right, let's go to the left side in here for my Lino Gates test project that we have been working with. And let's go ahead and say, for instance, I want to go to boards. In here, we'll say, yeah, leave that. I don't want to change anything. It's fine with me. And inside of there, I'm going to say new work item. Let's go ahead and create a bug or an epic or a feature or an issue. All of them could be great. By the way, one of them could be an issue or a task saying that before you move from dev to QA, for instance, there is a document that we have written called the deployment report document. And you have to actually go in here first and say read or completed. Before it actually can go further. And if you don't do that, it actually will not allow you to move from dev to QA. So even reading a document could be a task that you will submit to somebody. For right now, let's create a bug, okay? Let's go ahead and create a bug like that. And let's give it a title. We'll say, my Lino bug. Alrighty, sounds good enough. Lino bug. Let me give you here a capital L. Hey, I deserve it. All right, sounds good. All right, it's a new, you can actually go ahead and give some reproducible steps, system info. You can do whatever you want, but we have a bug right now in the system. All right, we'll say save this guy. So right now we have a bug. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead into queries, and I would like to create a query for this specific bug. I'm going to say new queries. So the work item, what type is it? I'm going to say, let's make it for bugs. And maybe the state of the bug, it is not equal to closed. I'm expecting for me to move from dev to QA, for instance, I have to have everything closed. If there is bug open still, I can say, do not let the gate keep the project going for that sprint. So I'm going to say, if it's not closed, then we have a problem. So this query here has to come back empty. Let's go ahead and run this query, and we should have one. See, when I run this query, that is the only bug that is not closed, is of status new available. So it does not come back empty. That's a problem for me. All right. The only thing left for us in here is that I have to save this query. Be careful with me right now. This is an important piece. If I say save this query, this has to be saved as a shared query so you can use it in the gate. You cannot just save it as a regular query. So I have to go to the, we'll give it in here, we'll say Lino bugs. All right. That is the name of the query. And in here, I'll say shared query. It cannot be under my queries. It has to be a shared query. All right. So that's pretty much the main job that you have to be worried about to make this work with no problems. There is one more thing that you will need to be aware about, is definitely going to the queries themselves and being able to tell this query in here. A lot of people cannot find it really easily, but you notice if I go with the mouse here where it says Lino bugs, the three dots for the ellipses shows up. If you have your mouse away, you will never see that, so be careful with that. So I need to go in here and I need to go ahead and say security. Very important step, otherwise it will not work, unfortunately. Click on the security for the Lino bugs, and notice in here all of them will actually end up being not set, not set, not set. I've already said it, but this is how it's going to look like for everybody. Make sure you come in here and say allow, okay? Allow here is very important. If the read is not allowed or is not set, unfortunately, the gate cannot get the information from the Lino bug. So I set it to allow for read. That's the only thing it needs, really. And then we can keep going. So these are two small things that you need to be aware of for the gates to work. Excellent. Let's go ahead now and go back to our pipeline. We'll say, let's go to the release pipeline. And I would like to go ahead and click on edit again. And let's go, for instance, to the QA one, all right? So the QA is a big deal, so I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to say, let's enable gates on this one. It will be, let's make it 1 minute so I don't have to wait too long, okay? But in real life, it usually is more even than 5 minutes. You have to give it some time. But I'll make it 1 minute for this one. And we'll say, let's add. And I'm going to add the query work item. And in this time, I'm going to say, which query would you like to have? Remember, I'm in the same project for the Lino Gates test, so I should see the Lino shared project, shared queries, and there is my Lino bugs. And the upper threshold is 0. Sometimes you're saying, as long as I have not more than 5 bugs that are not closed, I'm okay with that. In my case, I only have 1, so I need to set it to 0. So anything over 0, which is 1 in my case, it will not allow the gate to keep going. So if I come in here, for instance, we can actually take a look at advanced to set at lower threshold if you want, other variables if you need it. Always there is a reference name that you can reference in there. But this is really only the thing that you need. The name of the query and how many do you expect to come back. Anything above that, it's a no-go for the gate. All right, let's go ahead and say save this guy. Give it a nice comment to say what the gate is all about. We'll say okay. And now we can actually go all the way up and close this guy. And the only thing left is that I need to check a file, make a difference in a file to make it work. So guess what's going to happen now? It's going to build and it's going to deploy to dev. No problem. There is no gates there. And I might be able to need to approve it. That's fine. Okay. But after it gets approved and it actually deploys to dev, it's going to now try to go ahead after the approval to go to QA. And the QA now, there is a decision that has to be made. Do we do the approval first or the gate first? What do you think? Which one will run first? Well, I don't know if you notice or not, but when I go back in here for the gates, if I open it up, notice in here under deployment for the gates, the evaluation, there are 3 things in here for the gates and approval. Before gates ask for approval, or unsuccessful gates ask for approval, or ignore gates outcome and ask for approval. Most people will usually go with the first one, but again, you have choices to decide whether gates are more important than the approval or the approval wins. By default, before the gates, all the approval needs to be taken care of. And after the approval, that means we're really ready to go, then the gate will make a decision. Otherwise, you can actually choose a different way to do this as well. The time between the reevaluation of the gates is very important as well, because I don't want to keep hitting this every second. You know, that's too much. We want to give it enough time for the gate to happen. Maybe I need half an hour for people to close down their bug reports inside of the Azure DevOps. So you can come in here and change this from minutes to hours. Minimum duration for steady results after a successful gates evaluation, 0 minutes. That means immediately. As soon as somebody closes all the bugs, we should go. We should not wait multiple minutes or hours for this to continue being successful multiple times till we allow the gate to keep going. No need for that. Sometimes you need something like that. The timeout after which gates fail. So if gates keep failing, are you going to keep going like this forever? So we can give it 1 day, 12 hours, 6 hours, and after that we just report that the gates failed. You'll need to do something about it because it's not changing status and we keep failing, and there is no reason to do that every 15 minutes anymore. Does that make sense, everybody? Very, very powerful. Like I said, I love this feature actually in Azure DevOps for CI/CD. All right, so let's go ahead now that we've saved everything. Let's open up again our document in here for the pages. We'll say Control C, and maybe we'll have another line in here. Maybe we'll make this one an H2 instead, and we will say in here, we'll say gates done. Okay, and we'll say Control S. We'll go in here and we will say gates and commit and push. All right, so now I'm going to wait for this guy to finish. That will invoke the build pipeline, not the release, the build pipeline. And hopefully if I go back to my pipelines, you'll need there is a new one that started. There you go, it just did start. I can click on it and click on the stages. If you're one of these people that likes to actually watch what exactly is going on, it will try to find a machine that is of Windows 2022. Once it has access to one, it will start initializing the job, and then you will see the building, the restoring. Everything will happen one thing at a time. It might take a few seconds, maybe half a minute or so to do that. That's okay. I'm going to stop the recording and come back after it finishes all that build. So I'm going to be right back. All right, it took a few seconds, but it is successful. Let's see what's happening in the releases now. There you go, my release number 3 started, and it stopped at dev. Remember, dev requires an approval. That's okay, we can give it our approval and our blessing. Let's go back into my incognito window. I'm going to refresh this page, and there is my dev, and it's actually assigned to the Gmail account that I have. We'll click on that, and we'll say, go for it. Go for it. All right, and we'll say approve there. And that should actually allow us to keep going on the other side. So notice dev now will start, no problem, no gates there. The gate will happen on the QA one. So now when it's starting to go to the QA, 2 things will be required. The first one is the approval. The approval will have to happen first because that's the choice that I made. And once I approve it, now the gates will go into my bug reports, into repos, and find out if I have anything in that shared query that is not coming back with a 0. So there is the QA. Say QA is pending for Lino. Let's go ahead and do it again. I'm going to open up the incognito window. We'll go ahead and here click on the QA. We'll say ready for QA. All right, you can put whatever you want, of course, in there. And then I'm going to come back in here, and now it should start. Should it start? No. After the approval, it needs to go to the gates. Will the gates actually succeed? And we will find out that there is something wrong is going to happen with the gates. So we'll come in here. Yep, it is ready to go, but something bad will happen at this point. So let me go ahead and wait for it to do that. Remember, I said 1 minute. So we're not going to have to wait 5 minutes, but we do actually have to wait 1 minute. The gate will not resolve until 1 minute passes. So I'm going to stop the video and come back after 60 seconds have passed so we can see how it will fail on that. All right, after a minute it started. Notice if I put my cursor over it, it has been approved already, but now it's saying the QA environment is processing gates. So it's making the call to the query to find out if we come back with 0 or not. And this, hopefully, in a few seconds from now, it will fail and it will let me know that it did not pass. If I click on this guy in here, notice it's an X. Query work item is an X. And it will try like this every 1 minute because I chose to go from 50 minutes to 1 minute so we can do it faster. And every 1 minute will tell you it keeps failing. And we will keep failing like this for the whole 1 day. And after that, it will stop. Because I told it after 1 day, do not even try it again. But it will try it every 1 minute at this point. All right, so while it's doing that, let's go back to our board. And let's do something fun before the minute goes by. I'm going to open up the My Lino bug in here. And let's go ahead and close this one. So if instead of new, I can actually say closed. And now it's not going to be part of the query. Alrighty, so if I go back to my pipeline, I don't know if we did it fast enough or not, but right now it's going to processing the gate, and I bet you when the 60-second pass, the gate will find out, because it's already been approved, but the gate will find out in another 60 seconds, hey, it came back with 0. I don't have anything that is not closed, so I can actually make it, let it go. So I'm going to come back here in the next 30, 40 seconds or so to show you that this will succeed at this point. All right, I've been waiting for a couple of minutes and it's not hitting. Did I do something wrong? Let's take a look at it together. See, it has been several minutes. I expected every 1 minute. Let's click on this and see what is it doing right now. Look at that. 5 minutes and 50, almost 6 minutes have passed by. And it's telling me the next one will be in 10 minutes. So it's still doing a 15 minutes. But I told this 1 minute. Did I do it in the wrong place? Let's take a look. I'm going to click on releases. We click on edit. And here, if I go to the pre-deployment condition for the QA, let's go to gates. All right, so in gates, I said 1 minute, that's the delay before evaluation. So I did it actually in the wrong place. This is okay to do it 1 minute. But if I open up the query itself, notice in here, I will have a way of actually defining the environment. There it is. The time between re-evaluation of gates is 15 minutes. I should have set that to 1 minute so we don't have to wait 50 minutes between failures, okay? So if I set this to 1, I would have been done by now. But okay, I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna stop the video and come back in about maybe 9 minutes or so. But this is the one. It's not enough to set the 1 minute on the evaluation. That's just to start the whole gates evaluation. But this is the one between failures, and that's why we have to wait 15 minutes to make this happen. Sounds good? I'll be back here when it's done in a few minutes. Thank you. So notice we're almost there, 14 minutes and 50 seconds. So I just tried to start the video again before it finishes, but in the next 5 seconds, this will end up being the time to check the gate again. And that is the gate. The gate did not work again next in 1 minute. So it will give it 1 minute to be able to evaluate and run it. And I'm expecting it now in 1 minute to go ahead and succeed and being able to allow us to move forward. Make sense? Look at that. Something is wrong. Don't you agree? I keep failing every 15 minutes. Something is not right. All right, after I remembered, so I'm going to share with you the secret in here, folks, why it keeps failing. Is that if I go back to my board and I'm going to go to the work items, there is my Lino bug in here. I already closed it. It should actually succeed. But there is something definitely on the query that you need to be very aware of. Please remember this one. In the Lino bugs, which is the shared query, notice when I set security in here, I actually set it on the wrong group. It is not the Azure DevOps group of the administrators that needs to actually give the read to be allowed. It's actually the build service itself, and that's where a lot of mistakes happen. You'll notice in the forums, for instance, for Azure CI/CD, a lot of people miss this one. So look for something with the name of the project, Lino Gates Test. We'll say Lino Gates Test. And there will be 2 of them. The one I set is for the Lino Gates Test team. This is the one that has the allow. But the one that you need to set it on is the build service. Remember, the gate is going to make a call to our boards for the work items, and the read has to be allowed on that one. So I'm going to click on that. Notice it is not set on the read. So the build service will not succeed. So I'm going to come in here and say allow, and then we'll close it down. And at this point, hopefully we'll be in pretty good shape. That's the one step a lot of people miss. Let's go to the releases again. And there is the QA. Let's see how many minutes we have left. We have 4 minutes. I'll be back in 4 minutes. I'm expecting this one to succeed now because it will be able to make the call with the read permission on the build, not on the team. And we should be in good shape. Look at that. It finished. It finished and it was successful as well. So if I go back to my releases, notice QA is successful now. So the gate succeeded after the approval was successful, and now it moves to production. It's not going to move, of course, until 2 people actually end up using production, approving production. That's me and me on the Gmail. Both of us have to actually approve this. Then it will go ahead and finish. But notice the gate was on the QA one in here. Usually the gate will usually happen even heavily on the production. So you will put multiple gates on production. You will do the work items. You will call into Jira. You will have a compliance policy checked. You will have a sonar cloud. You will check you brushed your teeth and lost 500 pounds. And all of these things will need to happen, of course, before you move something into production to make sure everything is in pretty good shape. Hopefully that makes sense. You understand the difference between using Azure DevOps, adding approvals, adding gates after the approvals, so you can really be in full control of the entire continuous integration and continuous deployment between your different environments. I hope you enjoyed these 3 videos for this series, and we'll see you again soon in other videos coming up soon in here. Thank you so much.